Welcome to your chorus box. The first job is to make it ready for painting. This one was reasonably easy. I am sanding all over with a fairly fine sandpaper. You do not have to sand down to the metal at all. That's not the issue. But you do have to get rid of any stickers or raised up paint marks or anything like that on your chorus box. And sand all over so that you have a surface ready for painting. The next step when you finish the sanding is to take a damp cloth and wipe all over your box. You are wiping off that sanding dust to give you a good surface for the paint. As soon as that dries, you are ready for the resin smooth surface sealer. This is used because the green paint on the box is oil-based and just painting an undercoat is not enough. Put a layer of smooth surface sealer all over the box. It takes at least 2 hours to dry before you can put another coat on. Oh, and keep a better eye on the weather than I did. I had to throw a tarp over the box and sit in the car for a few minutes. Remember to take a photo to prove to Chorus that you applied the smooth surface sealer. I find I need to take a lot of gear with me. I have made a list of the things that I take. It is 3 pages long. Just pause on it if you need this information. Page 1, page 2, page 3. Smooth surface sealer does not give a white coat. And since I knew I would be using colours like yellow and orange, so the next step for me was to paint the whole box white. You can see in this picture that I actually have a very large sheet of cardboard between the box and the neighbour's wall. Sometimes I use a tarpaulin to cover the wall or fence, but I find cardboard is still best on the ground, especially round the sides of the box. My first task the next day was to transfer my design onto the box. I have traced my design onto clear plastic. If the concept interests you, please check out my other YouTube video on transferring pictures with clear plastic. I find it very convenient. So here I am taping the plastic onto the box, and then I'm going to take my pencil and just draw the outline of the figure that is going on the box. For the rainbow in my design, at first I just drew the outline of where I wanted the rainbow to be. I always paint the background first and then move forward. Here I'm sponge painting just over the lines that I've drawn previously that outline the figure and the rainbow. Whenever I am mixing colours or sponge painting, I like to put my paint on plastic lids that are from takeaway containers. Once I have finished the background and the paint is dry, the next step for me is to re-establish the figure and the rainbow. So here I am laying my plastic template back on the box and retracing the outlines of the figure. This is the advantage of the clear plastic tracing. I can see exactly where I want to put it. At this stage I have still only drawn the outlines of the figure as I want to block it in again. Having blocked in the figure and the rainbow, now I can lay my plastic back on and put in the detail of the figure with a pencil. And now the fun begins, the best part, adding the colour. I'd like you also to notice though that since my box didn't have the proper designations up in the top left hand corner, I've put them there myself. That is actually the name of this box, and it is very important that somewhere on your box, preferably in the top left hand corner, that the name of the box stays visible. As the day got hotter, it became harder to paint. So here I am adding some hot weather additive to my test pot. I find that half a capful of additive is plenty for one test pot. and it slows down the drying time. I don't believe we should put paint down the drain, so I stir up my dirty paint water and tip it into a bucket of cat litter. When the cat litter is saturated, then I bundle it up and throw it in the rubbish. Now I can bring my brushes inside and give them a good clean, but I have a way of treating my brushes that makes them last a lot longer. When I've given them a good clean, I'm going to dip them in a container of liquid soap. I rub the soap in so that it gets right down into the bottoms of the bristles, and then I leave it on the brush until next time I need it. Here I am wiping the excess soap off on the side of the container, and after I've done that, I will wipe the brushes again with my towel. Then I put them away just as they are. The bristles stay nicely shaped, and next time I need them, I rinse them, dry them, and use them. Usually I just leave the paint on my palettes to dry, and it is very easy to get it off the next day. Once again, I don't want to just wash it down the drain. I'll collect that paint off and put it in the rubbish. But if you need a tray and the paint's not dry yet, it is also simple enough to wipe as much paint off as you can, and then I just scrub the tray clean with my rag. And there I have a tray that is ready to use again, and no paint down the drain. I use a pastel pencil to redraw my lines on the darker areas because it is thinner than a piece of chalk. My palette knife is one of my most valuable tools. Aside from being really good for stirring the paint, it is how I get the paint out of the jar. It's actually important to make sure you don't just tip the paint out, because then you get a lot of paint in the screw part of the jar, and it can be very, very hard to get them open at a later time. I also use the palette knife for mixing colours on my palette. Whenever I need to change the colour on the palette knife, it's very easy to wipe it on a rag, and mixing with a palette knife sure saves my paintbrushes. The final step when you finish your artwork is to coat the box with graffiti guard. This will be supplied for you by the council or whichever organisation is organising the box painting. This is the third different type of graffiti guard that I have used, and they are all quite toxic. I prefer to use the greatest extent of safety guards that they all recommend. Use the best mask that you have for this job. This particular one requires that you do one coat and then go back in while it's still wet and do a second coat, and then come back when it's dry and do that again. This is the first graffiti guard that I've used that is acrylic based, so I could reuse the brush. Usually they require all sorts of chemicals to clean the brush, so I just buy a cheap brush, wrap it tightly in Glad wrap between coats, and then throw the brush away when I'm done. Thank you for watching. If you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me.